Challenge 3, Google SketchUp for Schools Building a Fort. In your Digital Warriors workbook, click on this link here. That will take you to SketchUp for Schools, which is a web-based app. The app will open and you click on Sign in with Google. If you have more than one Google account, make sure you select your school email account. And now you have your SketchUp for Schools desktop in front of you. We need to change the units. On the right hand side of the desktop there's a toolbar. Click on Model Info. It will open a palette. Select 0.0 meters, 0.0. Make sure length snapping is ticked and snap interval is set to 0.1 meter. You can close that dialog box now. The toolbar is on the left, and if you hover over any of the icons it will tell you what they're called. We have select, eraser, paint, and so on. Some of the tools have little triangles next to them, and if you click on those tools further selections will pop out, and again if you hover your cursor over them their names will pop out. At the bottom of the toolbar are some navigation buttons. So the orbit tool has a little arrow. I'll click and I get some other options. So the orbit tool enables me to do this. If you look on the right hand side of the screen, these buttons over here open some other palettes, and this is the instructor palette, which is really useful. So if I open that, and whatever tool I'm on, it will tell me how to use the tool. It'll also give me shortcuts, and I can make other modifications if I want to. Here's my model info that I had open earlier. If I click on the cross, that palette goes away, and now I just see my instructor. So here I have the orbit tool, the pan tool, the zoom tool. You can explore the others. Rectangle and dimensioning tool. Go to the rectangle tool, click on it, and then make sure you have rectangle selected. With the rectangle tool active, go to the origin, and the origin is where all the lines meet, the blue line, the green line, and the red line. So you want to start at the origin and we want to draw a rectangle out. Now mine's gone a bit weird. I don't want it like that, so I'm going to Control Z to undo, and I'm going to go back to my origin, click, and now I'm going to pull out. And you can see that my rectangle has started from the origin, which is here, and it comes out here. But I want to resize this rectangle. So to do that, I merely type 3, space 3. Then push enter, and you can see that my rectangle has now become a square of 3 by 3. If I go to my navigation tools at the bottom, select the orbit tool, I can orbit that around and have a look at my rectangle. Selecting and deleting. The top tool on the left is the select tool. Make it active, then click on your person who's on your desktop. There are two ways to delete things. Once they're selected, I can hit delete and they're gone. Control Z to undo, or I can use the eraser tool, and the eraser tool also deletes objects. Experiment with both to figure out which you're most comfortable and make sure you've deleted your man. Adding shapes. I want to add some shapes to the corners because I want to start making this look more like a fort. So I'm going to click on the rectangle tool, select the circle tool, and this time I want to add circles, and I want them to start on the corners of my square. And I want to make sure the radius is 0.5, so I type 0.5 and hit enter. I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the other 3 corners. I'm going to go back and use the eraser tool again, and this time I want to delete some of my lines where they overlap the circle and the square. So I'm going to click on these lines. I need to make sure I line up really carefully to make sure that I'm getting the lines deleted that I want to delete. I can use the pan tool to move across, Go back to the eraser tool and delete some more of my lines. I'm going to use the pan tool again, and then zoom in, eraser tool, and zoom out. I now want to make sure I've got everything deleted. By using the orbit tool I can check, and I think I still have a line here I need to delete, so go back to the eraser tool. To save your model, you need to go back to your Google Drive and create a new folder and call it Digital Warriors SketchUp. Click on Create. Once you have created that file, go back to your SketchUp for Schools model, click on Save, name it your last name, Fort, then click on OK. Find your Digital Warriors SketchUp folder, select it, click on Select, and you can see that your file is being saved. It's also got a name. Creating an offset. Click on the Push-Pull tool, select the Offset tool, go to your model, click on your model, and then drag and push and pull, and you are creating an offset. Now we want to constrain this offset to 0.1, so type in 0.1 and hit enter, and you can see you've now got a line that is offset from our original outline that's exactly 0.1 of a meter in from the outline. I'm going to go back to the same tool, and this time we're going to choose the push-pull option. We're going to select this outside bit here, pull it up a little bit, and we're going to type 2 and push enter. And we have got our fort walls. I'm going to click Save to make sure I'm saving my information as I go along. I'm going to use the tape measure tool now. The tape measure tool is here. And I'm going to measure in, pull in, and you can see a dotted line appear, and I want to type in 0.5. I want to use the orbit tool to orbit my model slightly, and I'm going to do the tape measure tool again and bring it in from this edge, 0.5, and push enter. I'm going to do exactly the same thing from this top edge here, pull it down, type in 0.5, push enter. My model now has some construction lines that are going to help me to draw an accurate rectangle to create a doorway. So I need to select the rectangle tool. I'm going to go onto my intersection here and click. I'm going to draw a rectangle that is exactly on my guidelines that I've just used the tape measure to draw. I've zoomed in a little bit so you can see it a bit more easily. I'm going to go back to the push-pull tool, select the push-pull tool, and then I'm going to select this rectangle, activate it, click on it, and then push it in slightly. Now I know my walls are 0.1 thick, so if I type in 0.1, push enter, you can see I've made a gap, and I've now created a doorway in my fort. Click on Save. I'm going to use the eraser tool to delete my guidelines. I'm going to use exactly the same method to add some windows into my fort. You can do the same to your fort. Once you're happy with your windows and your doors, go to your eraser tool and erase your guidelines. Click on Save. Using the Paint tool, select the Paint tool and a Materials browser will pop out. I'm just going to scroll up and close my instructor so I can see all of my materials. You can select a color and then tip it into a region on your model. And you can see it goes from line to line. You can also click on the search, and there are lots of other options that come up as well. So I'm going to look at brick and cladding and siding, and I'm going to choose a brick. I'm going to orbit around. So all my towers have now been rendered with a brick material. You can choose any material you want. I'm going to close that little box there and scroll down and see what other options I have. I've got some wood, which I don't like as much as the cladding that was up here in this section here. You can add any materials you want to your model. Just remember to save it when you have finished. So I've rendered all my surfaces. I've added a flooring. I've done my walls and my towers. I've even done inside my door frames and my window frames. Oh, there's one I've missed there. Let's grab that one. Make sure we've got it in the right surface. So I'm really happy with that. I've done all my rendering. I'm going to make sure I click save. So now we're going to add some components from a thing called the 3D Warehouse. I'm going to click on the components browser, and you can see here there's a search 3D Warehouse. I want to find a barrel to put outside my fort. Type in barrel. There's a barrel here. I'm going to click on this one, and once I've clicked on it, you can see it's now attached to my cursor, so I can move that barrel anywhere I want, and as soon as I click, it's located. My component has a blue frame around it, so the first thing I want to do is actually make my barrel a little smaller because it seems very big. And then I'm going to use the shortcut key S on my keyboard, and you can see I now have a frame around my component. It's yellow and it's got green handles on it. So moving any of the handles will help me resize my component. But if I want to keep it in proportion, I need to make sure I use one of the corner ones because it keeps it in a uniform scale and size. So you can see there I'm able to rescale my component. You can experiment by pulling the other ones, but seriously, it's not a good idea. Stick to the corner ones to help it look in proportion. Once you're happy with the size of your barrel, deselect it by clicking on the selection tool and then clicking anywhere else. We want to move our barrel now to a better location because where I've put it, it's blocking the door, and I'm not very happy with that. So I'm going to go back to the selection tool, select my component, and this time I'm going to use a move tool. So I need to go into this button here, the scale tool, and I'm going to click on the top one, move. Now to move my barrel, it's probably a good idea to zoom in quite close, and I'm going to click on the corner of the frame, and now my component is attached to my cursor. So I can move it over here out of the way. If I go to the orbit tool, I can orbit around and see it's a little bit far away from the wall. So I'm going to go back to the move tool, select the move tool, click on the corner of the component, and then drag it. And it says it's hit an endpoint. So if I'm happy with that, I need to click to release it, and then go back to the orbit tool, and I can orbit around and have a look at that. If I want to make a copy of my barrel, I can right click on it while it's selected, choose the copy option, go back to selection, deselect your barrel, and then right click again and paste. And I've got another barrel the same size as the first one I started with, but I can put it on the other side. It's also got a frame, and you can use the move tool to move it around to get it in a location that you're happy with. Investigate some other objects that you might want to bring into your fort from the 3D Warehouse. Don't forget to save when you have done. I want to add a door to my fort, so I'm going to go back to the search frame, type in door, and there's a whole lot of different kinds of doors that have come up. There, if you look at the bottom here, it says page 1 of 5,000, so I'm actually going to put a better description in. I want a wooden door, and I think I want a front door. So I've been quite specific. Click on search, and you can see I've only got 37 options coming up now, which is a bit easier to search through. You can put any kind of door on that you like. You can put any kind of door on that you like, but if you can't see any on the first page, click on this arrow here and it takes you through to some other ones. So I'm looking for a door that's a bit more suitable to a fort, so I'm going to have a look at my options. I quite like this strong medieval door. Now it's come in, it's attached to my cursor, but obviously it's too big for my doorway and it's around the wrong way. So I'm going to click to release it, and then I'm going to use my orbit tool to have a look at where it is. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is push S on my keyboard so I can scale it, and grab one of those corners and just scale it down a bit more. So now it's a little bit small, but that's probably easier for me to work with. I want to rotate my door so that it's at the right angle to fit into the doorway, and to do that I make sure that my door is selected, and it is because it has a blue frame around it. I then go to the rotate tool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to click on this bottom corner here, and it comes up end pointing component, and I can see a protractor there, it's blue. I need to keep that protractor blue, so I click once there, and then I go to the other end of the door and it says on red axis, which is fine, but I need to make sure that I'm clicking on the other end point in my component. Now when I move my cursor, it rotates around the first point. So I want to rotate my door until it says it's on the green axis. Once it's on the green axis and I can see that, click, and you can see your door is now located. I'm going to go back to this selection here and choose the move tool. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Now I'm going to take this very front corner here in my component, click, it's now attached to my cursor, and I want to make it join up to the front of my fort door here. So if you zoom in really carefully, you can see I've got the corner joining to the corner there, and where it says endpoint, then I can click to release. Zoom out a bit. Now you can see that my door doesn't quite fit into my doorway. That's fine. S for scale. I'm going to click on one of these handles and pull it just a little further. Make sure you click to release, otherwise you're going to have some weird things happen. Now we want to make some turrets to go on top of our towers. So to do that, I'm going to zoom out a little bit and then move my model to the top left corner. I want to go back to the rectangle tool and select the circle. I want to draw a circle and give it a radius of 0.7. I then want to select the line tool, take my cursor to the side of the circle, and then you should be able to find the center. Draw a line up from the center, constrain it to 1 meter by clicking 1, enter. Then draw another line from the top of the line you've just drawn to the edge of the circle, and then back to the base, and you should have a triangle there. We're now going to use the follow me tool, which is hidden behind the push pull tool. Zoom in a little bit on your design first. Select the follow me tool, click on the triangle, then click on the line of the circle and pull the triangle all the way around until you see endpoint pop up, then click. You've now got a cone that we can use as our roof for our tower or our turret. We're going to make it a group. So to make it a group, use your selection tool and draw a box around it. The whole thing should be selected. You can see it's colored blue. Right click, make a group. I can edit this group by double clicking inside it, and you can edit any group, so any object that you bring in from the 3D warehouse you can also edit. But I want to make this look like a roof, so I'm going to go back to my materials, make sure they're selected, and I'm going to scroll down and find some roofing materials, and I've got a few options here. I think I like this one the best, so I'm just going to use the paint bucket to tip it in, and then with my selection tool select anywhere, so I have my object now. I'm going to select it, and now I need to move my turret on top of my tower. So using the Move tool, click on one of the corners at the bottom. It's now attached to your cursor, and bring it up so it just sits on the end point in one of your designs. Use the Pan tool to center and zoom in a little bit. Now I'm going to use the Move tool, one of these edges that's close to the frame, and slide it in place. And then I'm going to use the Orbit tool to turn around and just check it from a few other views and make sure I'm happy with the position. And that looks pretty good to me. So while it's still selected, right click on it, select Copy, go to the Selection tool, click anywhere to deselect, right click again, select Paste, and you should now have another turret attached to your cursor. Again, get your cursor so it sits on an end point, zoom in a little closer, go to an edge, and then move it around until you're happy with its position. I'm going to zoom out, Orbit, check it from a few more angles. I think I can pull it out a little further on this side. Move tool, move. Just going to move a little bit that way. Orbit again. That looks really good. I'm going to do exactly the same thing to the other two turrets. As you can see, I have a finished fort. Don't forget to click on Save.